one of the most important things is rather than try to indoctrinate people into thinking like you, just ask them questions. Like, where did you learn that? How did you hear about that? Who taught you that? Why do you still think that now? Those questions, those are probing questions that sometimes, even if you don't like the answers, some people have never been asked those questions.
That's Dr. Omékongo Dibinga, and this is, well, That Went Sideways, a podcast that serves as a resource to help people have healthy, respectful communication. We present a diversity of ideas, tools, and techniques to help you transform conflict in relationships of all kinds. In this episode, we talk with Omékongo Dibinga about how individuals can respond to and undo racist stereotypes. He teaches intercultural communication at American University. He's the author of Lies About Black People: How to Combat Racist Stereotypes and Why It Matters. We spoke with Dr. Omékongo Dibinga at the 2025 White Privilege Conference.
I'm Sam Fuqua, co-host of the program with Alexis Miles. Hi, Alexis.
Hello, Sam.
So pleased to have Omékongo Dibinga with us for this edition of Well, That Went Sideways. We're here at the 2025 White Privilege Conference. And Alexis and I both just heard you speak, and it was very motivational. I can talk about the importance of motivation in the work you do and why you do that.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. You have to motivate yourself in a world that's actively trying to tear you down. And you look at television, you're sold on like every product but yourself. Whether it's pills, whether it's programs, whether it's everything. So you have to motivate yourself daily. They say, some people say, motivation doesn't really work for me. I was like, well, do you do it daily? It's like brushing your teeth doesn't work for you if you don't do it daily. So it's important to affirm yourself before you're going out into a world that's filled with so much negativity and hate.
That leads me to something. You talk about the need for motivation. So I'm looking at the title of your book, Lies About Black People: How to Combat Racist Stereotypes and Why It Matters. Mm-hmm. So a racist stereotype is demotivating for those people that are impacted by the stereotype. Can you talk about how that's a demotivator?
Yeah, and I'm glad you said for the people who are experiencing the stereotype, because the people who are making the stereotype feel very motivated. But when you live in a society where a narrative has already been created for you and about you before you were born. I have a whole chapter in Lies About Black People about just the media and how ideas came about black people with blackface and the idea of criminalization, and now people are more likely to think that we're criminals. That's a stereotype. I saw a story about a high school track star and the coach said that he got so fast running from the police. And the kid got so mad that he transferred from the school. So it's a stereotype. It was a raw product of these stories, and they're hurtful. And then there's people. They're ones that people think are good that are terrible for the community, like the Asian model minority myth. You talk to people in the Asian community, they talk about how that's really hurt them on so many levels. So we have to do a better job of understanding that.
Well, what about that old saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me? These are words.
Yeah, it's a lie. Legislation is words. The legislation that said, black people and Jewish people can't live here, those were words. You read that on a contract, that hurts. So that was a lie from the beginning.
And not only does it hurt psychologically, emotionally, it hurts economically. It plays out in real life. Plays out in real life is such a powerful phrase, because when I wrote this book, I originally wrote it for white people who are coming out of the Black Lives Matter movement, who are looking for more. But then I went online and I asked people give me some lies you were told about black people. The majority of the responses came from black people. They were talking about like they were told they can't swim. How they were, this is some of the chapters. They were told that they're not good with money. They were told that they're not good to go to college. So they didn't do those things. They didn't engage because of the stories they were told. And some of them talked about how they had to overcome those stories and narratives to be the first one to go to college, to be the first one to start a business and the like. So the lies, they impact everybody.
You asked some questions in your keynote, 7 questions,
yes,
I believe.
Rule of 7, yes.
And the one that, I was running down in my head was, who are your 7 closest friends, right? Mm-hmm. And what does that tell you about yourself and your relationships? But also, you said something like, if you have friends who are racist, who are homophobic, you got to let them go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then a person in the audience said, "Well, I do have a friend who's MAGA, right? And this person speaking is not. And I think I might be getting through to them.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to, as Loretta Ross would say, I'm trying to call them in rather than push them out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where's the kind of the line there? Or
Yeah.
How do we know? Like
My
when it's
thing
time
is-
to just say so long.
I mean, it's time to say so long, in my opinion, when you feel like the conversations you're having are bringing you down more than they're bringing you up. People are either bringing you up or down. There's no middle ground. And like I said in the talk, on social media, after like 2 exchanges with some people, they go straight to insults. I don't got time for that. But I can have a conversation with somebody who has completely different views of mine, as long as they believe in humanity. Like, everyone has a right to be alive, right? They can have different views about, things like gay marriage or Black Lives Matter or Israel, Palestine, whatever. But if they're interested in a conversation, hearing what I have to say, and they want to hear, and I want to hear what they have to say, show me scholarly articles, documentaries, video, so we can find, like I said, my most requested speech is finding common ground. As long as the conversation is productive, even if it's tense, that's fine. As long as people are moving towards something, we have to have those conversations. And when people aren't doing that, all you really can do is plant seeds. Well, I'm going to share something now that maybe in a year someone else will drop another seed, a third person, and then people, and it happens all of the time. We see stories about people who were Klansmen who are now building with the Black community, who are now people who are Nazis, neo-Nazis, who are now building with the Jewish community, building peace. Like, it can happen. But you have to be respectful of yourself enough to know where you can go with a particular conversation, because that's part of your health. And if you're not going to be respectful of your own boundaries and you're doing this work, we're going to lose you to this work because you took yourself out.
Do you have specific tips, since this is a podcast about conflict and conflict resolution, specific tips or techniques you use when someone has a different perspective and you're not sure whether it's time to just say see ya or enter into a dialogue?
The most important thing, there's several things we can talk about, but one of the most important things is, rather than try to indoctrinate people into thinking like you, just ask them questions. Like, where did you learn that? How did you hear about that? Who taught you that? Why do you still think that now? Those questions, those are probing questions that sometimes, even if you don't like the answers, some people have never been asked those questions. So they never had to think about it. Like I talked about in the speech, I had one of my college students who said my class on intercultural communication made him realize that he was a racist. So this is an 18, 19-year-old student who went to his entire life not realizing he had racist ideas. And that wasn't my goal to teach him that, but the class made him learn that. Because in the class, I told him the questions we ask in this class are more important than the answers. I don't need you to tell me, well, Dr. King did this on that day. It's important to know that. But what was the spirit of what happened? What did that lead people to? So that was one of the things I realized really helps people, because when you ask them questions, you don't have to have an answer in that moment. Leave them with something that has them thinking.
Well, this makes me think, you use the word stereotypes in the title, but a stereotype is the shortcut, and it stops thought.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, if we can get people to think, to actually reflect on something, that makes a difference. It breaks that stereotype.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, Chimamanda, in her Dangers of a Single Story, very famous TED Talk, she said it's not that stereotypes are wrong, it's that they're incomplete. People pick one thing. A lot of Black people do love to dance. So they pick that one thing and they'll say, okay, well, a lot of Black people do love to dance. That means they're not really interested in education. You see what I'm saying? Like they add stuff to it that's not complete. And that's where the stories come in, the single stories come in that become problematic. And as I said in the talk, all of us, whether we like it or not, are products of a story that someone else told about our people, whoever our people are, whether we're talking gender-wise, race-wise, religious-wise, narratives that were formed before we were even born. And unfortunately, we got to spend a lot of our time even just fighting that narrative.
Well, there's a move in this country to control the narrative very tightly. In your opinion, is that a deliberate, conscious effort, or is it just the product of running scared?
Oh, it's a deliberate, conscious effort based on fear. The fear of white people becoming a minority in this country is real. That whole idea about, white replacement theory and, when they were marching in Charlottesville, Jews would not replace us. Like all of that, I taught at Charlottesville semester, I saw it. So it's real and it's based on the fear. And that's what Trump ran on, even his first time as president. I remember, I'll never forget, he said, you better vote for me. This is your last chance. He's basically saying, like, it's your last chance to, like, save the culture. So get me in there, and I'll do that. And he's doing it even more now than he did back then. But even back then, he had the executive orders on DEI. There was places I couldn't go and talk about certain things because of his executive orders. So he ran on the preservation of whiteness. And people who wanted to preserve whiteness or who are white adjacent, many people from the Latino community who are finding out that they weren't as white as they thought they were going to be considered. They're realizing a lot of that right now. Even some black people who thought they can get some of those benefits of whiteness, it's not happening for them.
Well, do you think that most people are aware that the mythology of white supremacy is actually just a stereotype?
No. They've been told that white is real. Look, this is a country that used to call people yellow. If they're Asian, used to call indigenous people red, right? They got rid of those and started calling people closer to their terminology. I mean, in the beginning, before they started diversifying Latino in terms of the language, in terms of actually Puerto Rican or Dominican, like I think everybody was called Mexican. I talk about that in the book, right? So we started calling people closer to their nationality or ethnicity, but we kept white and black. We did that on purpose because there is no black without white. There's no white without black. You remove black people, what is white? Like, whiteness is not real. Like, blackness is not real. You know what is real? Your Jamaican American ancestry is real. Your Irish American ancestry is real. Your Italian American, your Polish culture, your Brazilian, like, those things are real. Like, what is white food? You know what I mean? What is white dance? You can't tell me what those are, but you can tell me what Irish dance is. You can tell me what Polish dance is. You can tell me what Jamaican dance is. You can tell me what Ghanaian dance is, right? Or, dances based on somebody's ethnicity, like if you're part of, like, the Wolof people or Pular. But the racial thing, we kept that because many people have their identities tied to whiteness. Jane Elliott has done so many videos on that where she asks people, how many of y'all would give up being white? And nobody stands up in the, she's like, that means what's happening. If you're proud, you want to keep your whiteness, well, aren't you standing up for people who are black? It's a story. You get rid of black. That's why I have the book, Lies About Black People.
You want to add one more thing to that? Meritocracy. Mm-hmm. Because whiteness and meritocracy seem to be in lockstep. So white people have merit, other people don't.
Yeah, and what merit is for white people is really the complexion of connection. That's really all it is. The white people in this country, they said Kamala Harris only had 3 months to run against Trump. No, Trump didn't have a 9-month head start. He had a 400+ year head start. He ran on white maleness, the two things this country were built on. No other candidate could run on that. Kamala couldn't do it. Hillary couldn't do it. Vivek Ramaswamy couldn't do it. Nikki Haley couldn't do it. He ran on white manhood. And so he had a 400-year start on that because that is their meritocracy. And the fact of the matter is, when you're challenging that meritocracy, equality looks like oppression. So if you have a country that's built on meritocracy, like, it's not diversity, equality, and inclusion. It's diversity, equity, and inclusion. Equity is about the things you need to do to get people towards equality. And too many white people don't want that.
Since we're talking about Trump, I've read that some data shows that he picked up more votes this time from men of color, from Latino men, from black men. Why do you think that is?
Well, there's a couple of things. So in the book, I have a thing on racial vocabulary. I don't even use the term people of color anymore because it blends in a group of people who don't have that much in common while white people get to stay white. We keep shrinking other groups. But to answer your question directly, he won the Latino male vote. He won that. With black men, it was like a 2% change. The second largest group to vote for Kamala Harris was black men. So, that's a different narrative between the two groups. But furthermore, to the point, It's because he ran on the idea of macho, right? And as I talk about in the book, there are tensions within, there are Black Latino people, first of all. That's all, we know that. But generally speaking, in this country, there are Black people and Latinos. There's been tensions between those groups that, there are many Latino men who are like, I'm not voting for a Black person, much less a Black woman. I'm not going to do that. Many Black men within our society, there's still many Black men came out strong for Kamala, but you know who didn't come out strong for Kamala in the Black male community? The Black hip hop community. Black male Hollywood did. Tyler Perry, all of those guys, the singers did. But there were more Black men who came out in the hip hop space for Hillary than they did for Kamala Harris. Snoop, all of these guys who endorse it, which speaks to that thing we call misogynoir, the misogyny directed against Black women, which is what hip-hop is built on. You see what I'm saying? So I think those were the issues. So even though there was a great deal of distance between the Latino male vote for Kamala versus the Black male vote, too many of us didn't come out. Like one Black male vote for Trump is too much for me. The top 3 groups that voted against Trump were Black women, followed by Black men, followed by Jewish people. Like, those are the 3 groups that knew what was up. They knew what he was selling, and they weren't buying it.
Say a little more about why you don't use the term people of color anymore. And in your talk, I think you specifically also addressed BIPOC,
Sure.
that acronym that you're not a fan of.
I hate it. So I have a whole chapter on your racialized vocabulary. And, I used to use people of color, probably up until about 2 or 3 years ago. And I started realizing that they were just lumping all of us in. And the more groups you lump in, the more stories get erased. So, for example, I think the one thing that made me realize this, when people were talking about there was a rise of COVID-related hate crimes against people of color, it's not true. There was a rise of COVID-related hate crimes against people within the Asian community. Black people didn't experience, I'm talking about disproportionately, hate-related crimes relating to COVID. During the 2016 election, when people talked about there was a rise in anti-immigrant sentiment against people of color, that's not true. It was primarily against Latino people. When people talk about a rise in unarmed police shootings against people of color, that's not true. That's Black people disproportionately. So we throw in all of these groups, but white people still get to stay white. And the thing is with that is that white is a color too. So why isn't that part? You know what I'm saying? So when we say people of color, you're using white people as the original, like a piece of paper, and everybody else is colored into that. When historically that's not true in terms of who's been on this planet the longest. So that's the type of stuff I'm saying in terms of we got to rethink the language that's been given to us. BIPOC is a term that got popular on social media. Black, Indigenous people of color. Doesn't make sense to me. Because if Black people are people of color and Indigenous people are people of color, it's almost like you're saying people of color, people of color. And then Black people and Indigenous people don't have, in my opinion, that much in common to be labeled as a group. Indigenous people owned slaves. They enslaved people. So did white people. But there's not a BIPOC category. Black people and Indigenous people have had moments of solidarity, true. But the Buffalo Soldiers, Black soldiers, were part of slaughtering Indigenous people. So, why do we keep coming up with these new terms to group people in, but we try to expand whiteness? Italian people weren't white in the beginning. Irish people weren't white in the beginning. But whiteness has expanded over the years where other groups are contracting. And that's part of the problem. That's what Roland Martin talks about in his group White Fear, that people are fearful of white people becoming the minority, so they do these things to dilute other populations, and I think it's problematic.
And when you say they, who are you referring to? I know we're talking about white people, but my impression is that most people don't think at that level.
Yeah.
So who is the they that perpetuate this?
Well, it's perpetuated at the top by the Trump types of the world, but many of us unknowingly, that's why I said in the talk, when we're using the language of our opponent, we're losing. So that's why I said many of us who do this work. And one of the things I made clear when I was speaking, I'm not the decider on this. I'm not the fight because I said don't use BIPOC, you can't. What I'm saying is that those of us who do this work, we need to have a deeper conversation about the language we are using. Are we still using language of our colonizers, of our enslavers, of our oppressors? And so we unknowingly become the messengers as well of a narrative that was created up top, even though we are committed to the social justice work. It's like in international affairs. I teach my students, why are y'all still using terms like developing countries? Why are you still using terms like third world? Like, we're using language of the Cold War in our international affairs classes now. So I'm like, you got to reevaluate. Are you still using language that's appropriate now? That's what's more important. So I don't care who you are. I don't care where you are, whether you're somewhere in MAGA, whether you're somewhere in the work that we're doing. We all need to reevaluate the language that was given to us to determine whether we need to come up with new language that fits our time and not just go by a social media popular phrase.
When I hear you say that, I'm also hearing slow it down, slow down.
That's right.
And even look at the very language that you're using.
That's right.
That if we really want to resolve conflicts at any level, we need to at least think about the language we're using.
Yes.
What's implicit in the language.
That's right.
You know?
And ask people how they should expect to be defined. Like this whole BIPOC thing, I'm like, okay, we got this term. And again, if people disagree with me on it, that's fine. Let's have the conversation. The term itself, from what I can determine, got popular in social media. Now everybody's using it. So people who are calling me black all of a sudden started calling me BIPOC. People were calling my children in school BIPOC children. And I'm like, did you talk to me? You know, my children are black children. They've always identified as that. I'd love to be called Congolese American. That's where my parents are from. But y'all created these terms. I'm going to define them for myself. And that's what matters most, you know? And when people don't do that, we run into these problems. And that's what people do when they say people are, I don't even use the term minority. I've never used the term minority because I was taught as a black person, I'm part of a global majority. So I'm at a point in my life where I'm trying to get rid of all of the disempowering words that have been given to me. I don't even like the term disability, but a lot of people who are part of that community are fine with the word. Not all of them, but enough of them of different backgrounds are fine enough with the term that I'm not the one to say stop using it. I'm listening to the people who are part of that community. But I've had some of them say it's not that we're disabled, it's that society disables us, which is a whole different conversation people don't want to have. So I'm learning from those communities. We have to learn from each other.
Well, speaking of people doing the work, you had a strong message for people in the room you were talking to earlier today about taking care of yourself, taking care of your health.
We're no good to the movement if we're not taking care of ourselves. All of the stress that we're doing, if we're just going to be stressed and then everything that's going on and just keep smoking, keep drinking, keep eating unhealthy foods, things our doctors say are bad for our cholesterol, whatever, then we're going to take ourselves out before these guys take us out. So I talk to people about the importance of exercising, sleeping, drinking water, looking at your diet, meditation, whatever it is. You have to fortify yourself internally. I gave the example of Dr. King, who was assassinated at the age of 39. And when they did the autopsy on him, had the heart of a 60-year-old because the stress of the movement. I mean, he couldn't be in rooms that had windows, like all the death threats, you know, those things. And so I use Dr. King because he's like the most extreme example of the stress that comes with the movement. And so I'm saying when we know that that stress is coming, we have to extra fortify ourselves so we don't take ourselves out. That's really important. If we don't claim our health, forget it. They've already won before they even open the door on us. You know what I'm saying? Don't close the door on yourself, dig in your grave with your teeth.
That reminds me of what you said earlier in your talk about centering humanity.
Yes.
That feels like part of that.
Yes.
Like this is my humanity.
Yes.
This is part of this. I need to take care of this. I need to think about the language I use to describe myself,
That's
other
right.
people's situations.
That's right.
Because I can diminish our humanity by
That's
the
right.
words that I'm using.
Just listen to the music. Yeah. Listen to the music, right? I mean, especially when we go to hip hop, I mean, these kids walking around, how they referring to themselves and how they talk about each other. What's empowering about that? And I say it to them. When you listen to this music, what does it make you want to do? And, you know, I'm not like a generational hater because when I was younger, we had all that as well. But in my generation, like, you know, you go back to like 90s hip hop, somebody like say somebody like a Cardi B, who's a big artist now, somebody like a Cardi B and a Lauryn Hill could exist at the same time, right? But nowadays, they push the Cardi B model, you know, somebody who they look at as selling sex or all of the other type of stuff. And there are deeper levels to Cardi B that a lot of people don't look at because they don't care. But like, why is it that female rappers who make it to the top today have to take their clothes off to do that or sell sex to do that? That wasn't always the case. But the kids, you see 5-year-olds dancing to artists like Sexy Red. You know, it's just like, come on. It's narratives, it's stories, it's stereotypes that are being sold to them at young ages. And we have to do the work to counter it when they get to high school, college, and other spaces.
And you're saying that's deliberate.
It's deliberate. Mm-hmm. Nothing in this world is unintentional. Mm-hmm. They're not fighting you to stop playing PlayStations. They're fighting you to stop voting. You know what I'm saying? They're not fighting to remove hip-hop from the curriculum or hip-hop from the mainstream conversations. They're fighting to remove stories about Rosa Parks and Dr. King and Malcolm X and Cesar Chavez, like, and Gandhi. Like, they're not fighting to remove you listening to Biggie or Lil Wayne. Do you know what I'm saying? So everything is intentional. And when people understand that, it's a whole different ballgame.
So you talked about the 7 questions. What are a couple of questions you would have people ask themselves so that they aren't falling into stereotypes?
Yeah, in the book, the solutions in the book, the rule of 7 questions you should be asking yourself. And it's got to, like I said, it's got to be 7 questions. Anyone can be committed to DEI with 1 or 2 questions. But like, what do your 7 closest friends look like? What do your 7 neighbors look like? What do your 7 co-workers look like? Malcolm X said that, high noon on Sunday is the most segregated part of America. What do your 7 closest congregants look like? If you're able to hire people, what do your 7 last hires look like? You listen to podcasts, what do the 7 hosts of your podcast look like? You go watch shows on Broadway or plays, what does the cast of the shows you watch look like? You got kids in your lives, what do the 7 toys you bought for them look like? When you do answer those questions, some people, when I do this exercise, they start crying because they realize they haven't fully been committed to this stuff. They realize they're not living it in their own lives, so they can't really talk about it outside of some books that they've read. And everybody should do. I encourage everybody to do that right now, whether you're reading the book, listening to the book on audio, because you can get it that way as well. Do that, and you'll see how much you're really about this life. I will end with a poem, if that's okay. This poem is called Let's Go, Upstander. And if we want to create a society where everybody can be celebrated and not tolerated, we just have to do the work to dig into books like mine and other ones in order to do this work. So this poem is called Let's Go, Upstander. If I want to change the world, I have to change myself. For changing the mind is true wealth, it's true health. My environment will never change until I change me, rearrange me. My thinking can never be the same. See, Gandhi went from lawyer to leader, changed his mind. King from preacher to Nobel Peace Prize, changed his mind. In fine time, align your mind and align the world. Liberate girls, turn child soldiers to child scholars. If you just believe that you can take your mind farther. But are you too comfortable to speak up on war? Are more of us shedding apathetic armor? I call for us all to do more. It starts now. See, we can change the TV, but we need to change we. It only takes a minute for you to change your life. It starts with you, but ends with the world. That's right. You change yourself, you change your home. Change your home, you change your block. Change your block, you change your hood for good, but don't stop. Change your hood, change your city, your state, your whole country. That's how women got free, slaves to citizens. See, if it is meant to be, it's up to you, so do you. Unleash the power of one is all you need to do.
Omékongo Dibinga, thank you so much for your time and for your work.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Dr. Omékongo Dibinga is the author of Lies About Black People, How to Combat Racist Stereotypes and Why It Matters. He's a professor at American University, where he teaches intercultural communication. Thanks for listening to Well, That Went Sideways. We produce new episodes twice a month. You can find them wherever you get your podcasts and on our website, sidewayspod.org. Our site has information on our guests, interview transcripts, and links to more conflict resolution resources. And we encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. That's at sidewayspod.org. Our production team is Mary Zinn, Jess Rao, Norma Johnson, Alexis Miles, Alia Thobani, and me, Sam Fuqua. Our theme music is by Mike Stewart. We produce these programs in Colorado, on the traditional lands of the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute nations. To learn more about the importance of land acknowledgement, visit our website, sidewayspod.org. And this podcast is a partnership with the Conflict Center, a Denver-based nonprofit that provides practical skills and training for addressing everyday conflicts. Find out more at conflictcenter.org.